Welcome, Solara here. I hope you guys are doing well. It is Monday, May the 12th, and I am here to do your full moon in Scorpio TAROTSTROLOGY Ascension report. Before I get into anything, I would like to extend my sincerest apologies because I did not show up and do your new moon in Taurus TAROTSTROLOGY Ascension report. I had every intention of coming on here and doing it, but I was so tired in that energy window, and I kept on having to put it off, and it just got to the point where, we were getting closer to the full moon in Scorpio, and I said, fuck a bunch of that. Let me just do the full moon in Scorpio reading when it's time, and I will go back and forth today a little bit with whatever threads of information that I haven't spoken on from the new moon in Taurus 2 weeks ago that are especially relevant about where we are now and where we're headed. So please bear with me as I do that tonight. And how are you doing? I hope you guys are doing well. These energies, these shifts are, 1 minute you might be completely elated and flowing, and then the next minute you're like, wipe the fuck out, and a lot of ups and downs, a lot of emotional shifts, a lot of shifts, I should say, in the emotional body, as is always the case with moons, but especially with water moons. So I hope you guys are doing well and that you're looking after yourself. A lot of divine feminine wisdom is returning and being unearthed on the planet. And as that occurs, we are being called to make those shifts, of course, internally, because as we internally shift, the activations that are in the planet are being shifted by us. It's a co-creative process, right? So we're being activated by the earth, and the earth is being activated by us, and we work together, kind of like how energy works together anyway, like an infinity loop, right? So let's get into it. Before I get into the chart, I just want to take a moment to welcome you. Welcome if you are visiting for the first time. Welcome if you joined me somewhere along the way. Welcome if you are heading over here from my other channel, Solar Speaks, or if you are heading over here from solar.xyz or wherever you may have, or Threads, wherever you may have found me. Thank you for being here. Or if you just, the algorithm chose you, that's all good too. Quick note about how I work. I'm not an astrologer. I'm not a classically trained astrologer. I don't actually really believe in astrology as it's taught, to be completely frank. I read energy. I use astrology as a form of energy reading. I merge it with tarot, numerology, and channeled messages to bring these ascension reports to you. So I'm not down with the astrology lingo. I pick up on the energies in other ways, but I'm not really very good with the astrological lingo. So, yes, if you are very much a stickler for that kind of thing, or you don't like people who read this chart because you believe astronomically that this is occurring, which is true. Astronomically the sun is in Aries and not Taurus right now, and yet because we are dealing with the energy, the collective focus is still on Taurus. So either way, they're both very potent pictures to look at, and with Tarotstrology I can pull out the energy of what's going on behind the scenes, irregardless as to the sign. So, but if you're not able to vibe with that, that's fine. That's cool. You don't have to agree with me. We can agree to disagree. But please know when you enter into here, that's how I work. So if you don't like it, you're welcome to leave. You've got the free will and the ability to leave without complaining about it. Okay. Alrighty. So let's get into it. Master degrees for today's full moon in Scorpio, 22, and then we got Mars at 11 degrees. Okay, so this is a degree of this is a full moon of mastery in some way, shape, or form. And what are we mastering? Well, when you're dealing with 22 is a degree of Capricorn. So this is showing that something that has been lingering in the emotional planes, getting heavier by the day, you're feeling it more and more and more. It's this full moon in Scorpio is birthing something. And of course, when you're dealing with scorpionic energy, it is the sign that tends to be about birth. It's about death, it's about rebirth. and how those energies work symbiotically together. You need one to have the other, right? So Scorpio is what helps us to go through the transformations that are necessary for us to be quote unquote born again. But Scorpio does that by helping us to alchemize our emotional fields by no longer being afraid of polarity. Scorpio helps us to understand and overstand that we are all things. And until we accept the fact that we are all things, then we actually are still living in self-rejection and self-betrayal narratives, meaning that you as a multidimensional being, you embody the wholeness of every energy that exists. So it's really, when you begin to realize that, it's hard to look at another person and not realize that everyone is actually a fucking mirror. It's just to what degree are they reflecting back that energy that exists also in you, in truth and clearly. Right? So 22 is a degree of materialization for that reason. It's when you could almost say, if you're dealing with it in natural birth, it's when the water breaks. When the water breaks and there ain't no going back, and baby starts to push out, that's like the 22 degree. That's 22 degrees, And we've got some 11 degree energy happening here too with Mars. We'll get into that. 11 is a gate opening. Okay, and as I say that, I do have the chart open for a few weeks ago, and let's talk about these numbers a little bit too, because this was the precursor for what was helping to get us here today. So on the new moon in Taurus, on the 27th of April, both the sun and the moon were meeting in Taurus at 7 degrees, at 7-7 energy. That showed you, that showed me, that showed us that something was coming into alignment. 7 is a degree of Libra. It shows when fields are harmonizing and coming into balance in some way, shape, or form. It also is connected to Saturnian energy, and Saturn is a planet that deals with time and cycles and karma and lessons and how that all interconnects and creates our timelines and our experiences, right? And to have the sun and the moon at that 7-7 energy, it was already forecasting that something was getting ready to break through, that the fields were being aligned for something to break through, right? And with that being Taurus energy, with the new moon in Taurus 2 weeks ago, that 7-7 energy, what is getting ready to break through? Well, I talked about it before. I talked about the return of the divine feminine wisdom. It's been returning bit by bit, but now we're going through a really grand birthing, a grand activation on the planet of the return of the grids and the codes and the accompanying mindsets and lifestyles that promote feminine wisdom, right? So you're dealing with Taurus, you're connecting to the divine mother. Aries is the first sign on the zodiac wheel that connects us to the divine father and our identity, much like your father gives you your name and your identity tells you who you are. Your I am truth is Aries. And then Taurus enters the divine mother and says, okay, your father has given you your name in accordance with who you are on a soul level, which is also your ascendant in astrology, how I read it. So I'm going to be here to give you the endowment of all the resources you need to thrive in that divine truth and identity. So Taurus is connected to the divine mother's gifts to us. And it's also connected to our energy fields, your Taurus field, right? Your energy field is what contains the information about who you are. And if not that, it contains the information about what you're holding in your energy. It will always hold the information about who you are, but sometimes, especially in the false matrix, the truth of that got buried under the programming and a slew of other external codes and information and influences that hid that from you predominantly, So to go back to the new moon in Taurus, we had the 11 degrees showing up again there, more foreshadowing, but this time it was in the first fire sign of the zodiac with Mercury in Aries at 11 degrees. And today's full moon in Scorpio, we've got Mars in Leo at 11 degrees now. This is significant. How? Why is it? Well, because the fire signs are indicate light codes, okay? And Aries indicates the codes you need for your mental body to be fired up to align with your truth. And Leo indicates the codes you need for your emotional field to be fired up, for your heart wisdom to be activated in the truth that comes by way of Aries. So to have two planets expressing themselves through master degrees, the master degree of 11 very specifically, which not for nothing is an Aquarian degree that connects to the opening of stargates, is how I've channeled it and how I read it. So to have that occur within the two moons in Taurus season is significant, you know, and then not for nothing, with the new moon in Taurus, we also had Neptune at 0 degrees Aries. So we had a lot of Aries energy. Aries is an initiator. Okay, so those are like the numbers that are of significance from the new moon as we were getting ready for today's full moon in Scorpio. So we're going to go back to the energy of today. Okay, so 2222. So let's break this down in tarot energies and see what else is going to be unveiled. So the sun in Taurus at 22 degrees. And not for nothing, the minutes on the sun and the moon are 12:12, which is a whole different story, because 12:12, it is a Piscean degree that has connections to the Neptune card in the tarot, which is the Hanged One. So with the minutes at 12:12, we're showing that as something breaks through materially, it's inverting something. And I'm almost seeing it kind of like as a slow turning of something as it's entering onto the earth plane. So it almost feels like today, and I've been getting this feeling around this full moon also, that inverted timelines are being deadened. And the true timelines, as the inverted ones are cleared, are rising. They're materializing, right? So the sun in Taurus at 22 degrees, that's the sun card. Taurus is the Hierophant, and to a lesser extent, it is the Empress. When you're dealing with Taurus energy in the major arcana, you're also kind of dealing with the underlying energies of the Wheel of Fortune and the world, because the fixed cross energies are exemplified through the world and the Wheel of Fortune card in the tarot. And the world and the Wheel of Fortune is when something begins to shift. So the Wheel of Fortune is when cycles end and begin. The world is when cycles that have become eras close out. Okay, so we do have that underpinning story whenever we enter into fixed sign territory also. And the fixed signs, if you're not aware, are Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius. Okay, so the sun in Taurus at 22 degrees. 22 degrees is 7 of Pentacles in the tarot. It's the 7 of Pentacles. And what is that card about? Well, it's about many things, but what I'm really pulling in here, well, first and foremost, do you notice at all, or I haven't said it yet, but maybe you'll notice it now when I say it, that the card that represents the sun in Taurus at 22 degrees is the 7 of Pentacles. And the card that represents the moon in Scorpio at 22 degrees is the 7 of Cups. So do you see we got 7-7 energy showing up again? We got that numerology showing up in the minor arcana representations of today's sun and moon energies, echoing the 7-7 motif from the new moon in Taurus. 7-7, something is being put into order. But also you should know, when you start to see an abundance of 7, as I say, that is 2023 on my clock, which breaks down to 7. When you start to see an abundance of 7s, you know, like if you're angel numbers or whatever, it can indicate a few things. So some people, when they see that, they think about, you know, slot machines. 777 is like a lucky number. But it really depends on what's going on in your reality at that time. But 777 often means that something is trying to either come into alignment, but it can also denote that something is trying to pull you out of alignment. It depends on how you're reading it given your circumstances. It can be a warning, like, get back into alignment. You're being shifted in some way, shape, or form, or an external energy is trying to do something to pull you out. Or 777 can speak of the fact that something is returning into alignment. You have to take it, you know, as it resonates. But it is a card of divine alignment on earth. Let's put it that way. Okay, so the 7 of Pentacles, where the sun is, where we're getting the maximum illumination, is all the ways we've been sowing and not reaping. And with this whole idea of like timeline inversion, the timelines that have been inverted being flipped back the right way up and materializing now through this window, that has a lot to do also with the recovery of your personal wealth codes that you were endowed by the Divine Mother in order to take them out, multiply them, and create personal and collective wealth, which is also Scorpio energy. So, a lot of what we've been going through in the false matrix is constantly sowing and never reaping, because we were in an energy harvesting complex, right? And so a lot of the timelines where that has been occurring have been, you know, inverted. So we've been in false timelines, living false realities, meaning the timelines that we were being given and shuffled through didn't match who we were cosmologically, or even match what it was we were putting out. And this is being corrected. This has been being corrected, but in some way through this full moon in Scorpio, there's a monumental shift that's occurring in all of that too. Now, not for nothing, another message that's been coming through collectively, and you know what I've been writing about and talking about a lot when it started to make itself real to me like a week or two ago, is that in this lead up now, up until the full moon in Capricorn that's happening on July 10th, the ancestral grids that supported your harvesting dynamics or your energy system dynamics within your family systems, for better or for worse, those grids that supported timeline inversion, for those of you that were bound to certain bloodlines, those grids are powering down now. Those grids are powering down now. If you think about energy, works with a cycle within a cycle within a cycle. So when something needs to start to power down, most of the time you're going to move from the outside in. And right now it's almost like we're at, you know, like they're showing me an eye. We're at the pupil, the nucleus of some of these grander collective and social energy cycles that began with the family unit. So they weren't lying when they said that the family is the thing that holds the world together, that holds the earth together. It is, right? But not necessarily in the savory way that we thought. Because a lot of families in the false matrix, because it was a soul harvesting complex, the family structure was designed to draw in souls to certain bloodlines for the specific purpose of harvesting those souls specifically, and other family members vampirizing those souls in a myriad of ways, from, you know, very small unconscious ways all the way to the ones who nefariously were sacrificing their family members very consciously and conscientiously for certain reasons. So, you know, Then we were fed a lot of programming around family and what it meant to be loyal and all this other stuff. And all of that was programming to keep you stuck in scenarios where you would willfully be harvested because you felt too guilty or afraid or ashamed to extricate yourself. But the beauty of, and we're dealing with Capricorn degrees here, right? 2222. And I'm talking about how this is in the lead up to the full moon in Capricorn on July 10th. The beauty about Ascension and what it's kicked off, which is that we are in a time of Jubilee. And Jubilee is a time that occurs, it occurs at different points, right? But Jubilee occurs at the end of eras also, at the end of grand cycles. And if you know anything about what's going on right now in Ascension, we're not just moving from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. We are ending even grander cycles, and not just one. You know what I mean? So there's a Jubilee energy that is available on so many levels to us. And what is Jubilee? Jubilee is when those who have been enslaved get their liberation back and get back what was stolen from them. So if you read about it biblically, for example, when they talk about the year of Jubilee, I forget how often it would happen, but it was when all slaves would be freed and they'd be given back the land that was taken from them, I believe is how they would explain it in the Bible. But that it is a cosmic principle, you know. So when you're living in Jubilee, it's all the contracts where you were oftentimes non-consensually binded to certain characters, and you didn't even realize it, right? Those contracts die because you were never meant to be anyone's slave. Not physically, not mentally, not emotionally, not spiritually, not energetically. You are supposed to be a sovereign being rooted in your divine identity and your worth, walking the earth like the reflection and fractal of source energy that you are. So Jubilee means that all of the contracts that were designed to keep you, for one thing, unaware that you were binded, all those contracts are broken. Okay, and so in 2022, in the full moon in Capricorn, was when a lot of those contracts began to be broken. Okay, and so since then we've been in a 3-year window of revelation of what you actually were being contracted to, right? So that by the time you got to this point where now the grids are powering down, you're no longer entangled with those grids, because you've been waking up, you've been doing the work, you've been calling your shit back, you've been rising higher into your sovereignty, you've been learning how to detangle yourself from being too empathic and compassionate because you still do have that tie to certain beings. You've been learning how to do all of that to prepare you for when the grid's powered down and you wouldn't be stuck in that karmic mess, which some people are still stuck in. The ones who are too afraid to heal, to rise, to face up to themselves, to face up to the truth of what was going on in those realities, they've chosen to be stuck in that grid in many ways, you know. But we were all given the opportunity to see, but the way this works a lot of the time is you don't begin to see until you begin to get real. You can only see as much in external energies as you are able to see from within. So the more you're able to see and to read energy, the most gifted energy readers are the ones who see themselves clearly. You can't properly read and see things externally if you don't see them first within. Because everything is a mirror of you anyway, because you're a holographic being. So, to get back to these energies, the sun in Capricorn at 22 degrees, we are materializing our true timelines, and in many ways getting back what it was that has been taken from us in the timeline inversion fuckery. Because how many of you have been aware now, especially in the past 3 years, because as much as it feels like sometimes, things were getting worse, they weren't getting worse for you. You were just actually going through the same shit you'd been going through. The reason it felt magnified was now because you had awareness. And you needed that awareness to fight, to heal, to do all of that stuff. But everything that you've been going through in the past 3 years, you've been going through it your whole life here. You've been going through it incarnations here. It's just that now it's like the difference between being in the dentist and getting anesthesia versus having that bitch being pulled out without any numbing. But it's the same procedure. But in one reality, you were numb through it all and you don't feel it. And in another reality now, you're feeling it. You're feeling what was beneath the anesthesia, the amnesia. So it wasn't necessarily that it was getting worse. Your awareness made it feel that way. But this is what was happening to you all along. Right? So, what was I going to say? So the sun in Capricorn at 22 degrees with the 7 of Pentacles, getting back a lot of what was being taken from you, and you began to notice it a lot. That's what I was going to say. In the past few years, you probably began to notice it a lot, because up until a few years ago, when you kept on falling into bad luck and bad luck and bad times and money blocks and failing here and failing there, you probably thought, well, there must be something that's really wrong with me. And you probably lived in shame, which actually only fed that energy harvesting agenda all the more. Was that self-hatred, that inability to see what was actually going on, which was the point of the false matrix. But in the past few years, you may have woken up and started to see how strategic a lot of these energies were around blocks and so-called failures and all this other stuff, how strategic it was, and how you started to do all the right things, and the same shit was happening, because it was never about what you were doing. It was about how your fields had been rigged to fail, and you didn't even realize. You were just running around doing what they told you had to do in the false matrix and getting no results and thinking there was something wrong with you. And meanwhile, your whole reality has been rigged. So, this is what's being corrected through this full moon in Scorpio. Sun in Taurus at 22 degrees, correction of how timelines are being birthed on the planet again, based upon true divine net worth, as opposed to what was being manipulated and forced through trafficking, spiritual trafficking, and other forms of trafficking and harvesting. So there's a big spotlight right now on self-worth. There's a big adjustment that must come through in your frequency, where you rise up and you're no longer wavering, right? So you have to choose who it is you are right now. And that's what Aries brings you through to begin with. And Taurus is now grounding it in. Who did you decide you were? Through Aries season, let's ground that in. So for many of you right now, you are being called to make more definitive answers, make more definitive choices. And the reason you're being called to make more definitive choices is because that's what anchors in your frequency. You can't be wavering and dilly-dallying and being pulled here and being pulled there and having other people sway you in certain ways. You've got to get stubborn, like that Aries Taurus energy, and you got to stand strong in who you now know you are, what you're worth, and what you will accept, etc. This is what this full moon is about also, getting rid of the wavering energies that really a lot of the time are a reflection of self-doubt. That uncertainty that rises, self-doubt, questioning your worth, questioning your ability, that causes wavering. Lack of trust in self, even when you're not trusting someone else. That's lack of trust in self, because at the end of the day, all you need is yourself. So if somebody does something to you, that breaks trust, then that's on them. You still got yourself, and yeah, it still hurts, etc. But a lot of the time, when we don't trust ourselves, we don't trust other people. And that's a lack of that's like that doubt about your power and who you are. And we're being called to like really root into our true divine identity. And in that, some of the biggest battles you're going to be facing right now, and this comes up every Taurus season, are people trying to tell you who the fuck you are, or trying to put labels and cast spells on you. And this is when you got to use your throat, quite literally, but really your throat is what aligns you cosmically with your true frequency in general. And you got to debunk the lies, because there's a lot of projecting that happens through the Taurus-Scorpio axis, a lot of projecting, a lot of beings deflecting because they don't want to go there and see their polarities. They don't want to go there and see the mirror, which is what Scorpio calls us into. Like I said in the beginning, Scorpio calls you in to see the fullness of your polarity and how everything and everyone's your fucking reflection, if you are wise enough to see. And when you are wise enough to see that, then all the work that you're doing internally, no matter what happens or what someone else does, internally you will ask yourself the question, where is that in me? And what is it that I need to see? What's the lesson here that I need to learn? Everyone's mirroring back to you something you need to see or correct or become aware of or hone in deeper within yourself. I'm not sitting here and saying that everyone is reflecting that back to you perfectly, but there must be a degree of that in you for it to even exist in your reality, because you're a holographic being. Moon in Scorpio at 22 degrees. So it's a full moon. So that's double illumination, right? With the sun and the moon, double illumination. There's a lot of things coming to the light. And there's a lot of being shown original templates and grids and what's beneath some of the shit that's been happening repetitively through cycles. There's a lot of exposure that is coming through this full moon in Scorpio. And the full moon in Scorpio is an exposing moon, and it's an exposing moon in order to help you align. It's a very aligning moon if you allow for it to, right? It's not comfortable. It's not comfortable. It might require for you to make hard decisions. It might require for you to put to death some things that you don't necessarily want to let go of because it's familiar, because it feels safe, because you don't know when you let go of one thing what you're going to grab a hold of next. All of those things challenge you with the full moon in Scorpio. But the Taurus energy says, but you got to rise into your worth. You got to rise into your worth and know that when you do, every time you rise into your worth, what you need will meet you. And the more that you're able to do that without wavering, it doesn't even become what you need. It becomes what you need in order to thrive, which then becomes what you desire, depending on how rooted you can become in that frequency of choosing your self-worth above all things, knowing who you are and choosing to make moves in accordance with that, even if other beings don't get it. They don't have to get your worth. Did nobody have that conversation but you and Source? They don't have to know who you are. And here's the thing. Sometimes beings are blinded from seeing your worth because they'll measure you materially. They'll measure you materially. They'll look at your life and they'll say, well, you have this and you don't have that and you're this age and this is what you have and all that other shit. And it's just like, well, I guess you're blinded by my resplendence. Because in the spirit, excuse me, that was an attack against my throat. Fuck you very much. In the spirit, this false matrix is an inversion. This false matrix is an inversion. So the very beings that are looked down upon in the false matrix, the ones with the circumstances that other people turn their noses up at. Again, I repeat, this false matrix is an inversion. And we're flipping the inverted timelines the right way up. So sometimes when people aren't able to connect to the truth of your divine net worth, and they want to measure you against false matrix metrics, it's actually protection because they're blinded from the truth of who you are. because they don't need to see it, because they're not ready for it, and they're not worthy of your caliber of energy. So this moon is all about worth. What do you attribute your worth to? When you look at someone else, what do you attribute their worth to? Because the new earth value systems don't give a fuck about who you know and how many followers you've got and all that other shit. It's not important. It's a frequency game. It's a frequency game. Right? So it's an exhilarating full moon, right? For some of you. It really is. You know, even in the midst of the shit. And there's a lot of interference that's been occurring in the lead up to this full moon, designed to make you feel shaky. And maybe it did shake you up. I'm not one to come on here and lie. I was shaken. I still deal with, these attacks around the full moon and having to decipher the energy. And when you're in it, it's really fucking hard until you get away from it a little bit and you can look back at it and you can begin to break it apart. Right? Because a lot of the shit that's coming apart are things that you've been through and things you went through that traumatized the fuck out of you. So this isn't to say that everything is hunky-dory, beautiful and glorious. It's not even about that. And yet, at the same time, it is. So, excuse me. Mercury in Taurus, talking about our worth, right? That's a conversation coming through today's full moon in Scorpio. A lot of chatter around your worth. A lot of chatter in the skies, in the cosmos, about your worth today. In more ways than one. I ain't just talking about the cosmos, because let's be real, Scorpio is what connects us to the spiritual black market also. So when we're talking about worth, and we're talking about everyone's talking about your worth today, we're not just talking about the stars and the planets. We're also talking about some of the systems. We're also talking about the systems on this earth that have quantified you in a myriad of ways. They've quantified you through their social systems, and they've quantified you spiritually also. Because these beings know who you are. You didn't just enter onto this planet and into the portal of your mother's womb and nobody knew who the fuck you were. You had to be, just like you enter into a country and you've got papers when you're a foreigner and they need to know who you are. It's the same thing when you enter the false matrix. They have all of your cosmological metrics. They know who you are, and they tag you a lot of the time. And well, we won't get into that. So they know your cosmological value. And this is how they set up their spiritual black markets too. This is why they put you in certain bloodlines to be vampirized. And then they utilize those resources that they siphon from you, and they put it on the spiritual black markets. And they do that through the Taurus-Scorpio axis, because again, we're dealing with worth and value. And their whole financial systems and systems of quote unquote value, what they call value and worth, is predicated upon your soul. It's predicated upon your soul worth and their ability to harvest you while pretending that none of this stuff exists. So for many of you, this full moon in Scorpio is also giving you back shit that you've lost over time, this lifetime, and many incarnations, to this constant spiritual black market fuckery. And for many of you, you've lost it because of the ancestral grids you've been binded into in order to be an energetic cash cow or an energetic mule. You scapegoats, that's not just a title, it's not just an emotional thing or a psychological thing, it's a spiritual thing. You were not only marked to be a scapegoat if you were one in your family, you were marked to be a scapegoat in the collective and social arena too. You were being perpetually harvested, and you were set up originally through that ancestral grid, which spread out to connect you into community and social and collective and global grids, so that other beings had wider access to also do that to you. This is why for so many of you, you keep repeating, even if you were a scapegoat and you got away from your family, you kept on repeating those cycles and those experiences and relationships with people where you were scapegoated time and time again. It's because you were gridded in such a way energetically to be harvested like that. And to be not only harvested, because the scapegoat isn't just harvested, the scapegoat is the one who they put their karma on and then mock, so that they stay under the weight of other beings' rejected energy, which is their own shame, the things they don't want to own for themselves, and then they've got to carry. Then they're made to be ashamed for not carrying it well, right? So other beings are like, like treating you certain ways, and then expecting you to just take it, and you're supposed to carry that, which is oftentimes their rejected shadow. So you're supposed to carry the weight of a whole family's rejected shadow, and then society's rejected shadow, and it's supposed to weigh you down so that you become so ashamed that you fully check out on yourself, which is the final act of scapegoatism. So all the ways you've been energetically wired against yourself, against your worth, against your ability to capitalize off of your power and your truth and your worth, all of that is being undone through all of this. And simultaneously, as I said before, those grids are powering down. So Mercury in Taurus at 3 degrees is talking about your worth. It's talking about your worth, and it's talking about the divine feminine energy that the divine mother endowment that you have. So let's break it down. Okay, so Mercury, you got the Magician. With Taurus, you're dealing again with the Hierophant, the Empress, to a lesser extent, and again, underpinning somewhat the Wheel of Fortune and the World. And 3 degrees of Taurus is the 5 of Pentacles. So Mercury is really speaking to us right now about the lack story. But what it feels like more than ever, it's like we're not getting a talking to about this lack story. We're being shown how to divest ourselves of it. There's a lot of help that feels like it's coming through this energy corridor if you are divesting of what never belonged to you and rising into your power and your truth. And so Mercury is helping you to mentally, I feel like, really divest of all lack consciousness, and to really rise into the story of your worth. And this is why the battles with other beings trying to label you a certain way are so intense, because the only way to rise into your worth in these kinds of densities is to fight through some things that make you take a stand. So 3 is a degree of Gemini, which is mercurial energy also. And 3 is connected to the Empress card in the tarot. So this is about birthing, maybe even birthing your true voice for some of you in this full moon in Scorpio. You are birthing, and I wouldn't even just say it's a full moon in Scorpio. I would say this is a big theme every Taurus season, but very pronounced this one. Birthing your new voice, your true voice, not your new voice, your true voice. And it's the 5th chakra, your throat chakra. That's what connects you to Taurus energy, and also it's what gives you access to the fifth dimension, and the what we call the 5th dimension is where is the bare minimum to begin entering into new earth timelines, to be able to maintain that frequency, right? So some beings are here to experience 5th dimensional realities, and some people are here to go up even higher and experience and bring those things back onto the earth. It really just depends who you are. So, and maybe this is what this is about too, birthing that ability to wake up and to realize that, because that caliber and ability to root into that higher dimensional truth, it really requires for you to know cosmologically who you are. You don't just wake up with 8th dimensional codes and just able to anchor them on the earth if you don't really know who you are. And 8th dimensional is just an example. It goes higher than that. Okay, so Venus in Aries at 8 degrees. So Venus is firing us up about, in many ways, being true to our passions and helping us to get behind our purpose. That's what Venus in Aries has felt like it's been doing, since Venus entered into Aries, and now Mars is in Leo. So we got Venus and Mars both in fire signs firing us up about what we would call our mission, and we all have different missions, and it's not, false matrix related. It's not like your mission is to do this work and your career. No, your mission is to do whatever it is that brings you a sense of internal harmony, peace, joy, increases your worth on this planet, and helps you to leave behind a meaningful legacy. And the legacy is frequential above all things, right? So many of you have been through so much, and you're here to help not only put to death the old world, but now you're here to build a new world, and you're here to advocate and to clear out a lot of the programming and the systems and the ways that we've become accustomed to living in ways that are really far from being human a lot of the time, from being even humane to ourselves and to one another. You're here to rewrite the story of this new earth together, and so this Venus in Aries is here to fire you up in the passion you have for what it is that you're actually here to do, the thing that you've had to bury time and time again, a lot of the time for survival, or the thing that time and time again beings have tried to take you off your path or make you forget that's actually what you're here for, or you've settled for doing something that you might be good at, but it's not what you're actually here for. This is a rerouting back onto the truth of what it is that lights you up, because we all do that. We all get, lost in survival, sometimes, and in that, and then with all of the attacks, you sometimes forget what it is that fires you up, because you're just trying to make it through another day. And this Venus in Aries is just no, I'm here to help you remember what you love and to help you get that energy and that fire behind it. So Venus in Aries at 8 degrees. Venus is the Empress. Aries is the Emperor. So there's some kind of balance coming in of masculine and feminine principles that are allowing for you to do that. 8 degrees of Aries is the Two of Wands. This is something being instigated, being lit up. Yes? Mars in Leo at 11 degrees. Mars, I love it when Mars enters Leo. I really do. I love it when Mars enters Leo, because Mars starts to fight for your inner child. Fight in many ways for different things, but one way that Mars shows itself up in Leo is it fights for your inner child. It advocates and fights for you to remember, again, what lights your heart up. Because when you were a child, you had a clearer understanding of what you actually were here to do before you got programmed out of it. And so Mars is here to breathe some fire into your solar plexus and help you also to take action on those things that on the things that you love to do, following your heart. That's Leo energy. But not only that, it feels like through this full moon in Scorpio with Mars and Leo at 11 degrees, and 11 being a degree of Aquarius, connected to also the Justice card in the tarot, and 11 also being a gateway or a stargate opener. It really feels like Mars is reconnecting us to to the truth of who we were before the false matrix caused us to forget. So it's almost like Mars is giving us back access to the keys and the codes of our previous golden age wisdom. And in that golden age, we did do what we loved to do. That's why it was a golden age. And Mars is like opening the gate to, almost like it feels like, to unlock information that's been stored in the earth planes and has been stored within our own energy fields, that because of the frequency and the fuckery on the earth, we haven't been able to access it until now. And Mars is just like opening the gates and being like, welcome, you can have access to this stuff again. And the more that you do the work of alchemizing polarity within yourself, doing the shadow work, connecting to your multidimensional truth, which will show you you are all things, whether you want to classify them as being good or bad, it don't matter. You are the all. And all of those energies are there for you to wield with power for the purpose of alchemy and balance. And Mars is here to help you as you do that, to re-access some of those codes and remembrances that require for you to be that level of an alchemist for the protection of their sacredness again. Yes. Jupiter in Gemini at 23 degrees. Oh, I didn't go through this, so sorry. Mars is the tower. That's been coming up a lot in collective spreads over the past few days, but it's a tower that is like the tower and the sun card, this is exactly what it is, actually, now that I say that. It came out in a spread that I did on Solara Speaks today too, but Mars is the tower and Leo is the sun, as well as strength. So we've got the tower, strength, and the sun. And then the 11 degrees, we got the 6 of motherfucking wands. And 11 degrees of Leo connects to the 6 of wands, which connects you to 8 codes. So maybe some of you, whatever it was that happened to you last year in the 888 portal, there's some kind of beckoning back to that, gates opening up to help you materialize those codes that you probably have had to energetically really fight to hold on to, given the amount of fuckery that came through that portal, or what they tried to enforce against us as that portal was opened. Okay, so Jupiter in Gemini at 23 degrees. Jupiter is expanding your mind beyond the programs of this earth planes to really connect you with some Age of Aquarius far out shit, you could say. And I say that because the 23 degree of Gemini, 23 is an Aquarian degree. This Gemini energy, it's the 10 of Swords, right? So it's a final card where you have to push past all the limitations of your own mind that want to put you back into a position of being powerless or dependent on someone else's story or narrative about who the fuck you are. Jupiter is the Wheel of Fortune. Okay, this Gemini energy, this is the Lovers and the Magician to a lesser extent. And then again, I said it's the 10 of Swords also, an Aquarian degree. So we really are shedding a lot of the Piscean programming, but not just the Piscean programming. I would say the programming that has had us bound to a lie, bound to the illusions of the simulation throughout the time of the false matrix. Yes. So I'm going to just do the North and the South Node and close this out now, because it's getting late. North Node and South Node are at 24 degrees. 24 degrees of Pisces in North Node, 24 degrees of Virgo in the South Node, 24, 24. Those are degrees of Pisces. But it also feels like degrees of completion. Degrees of completion. It really does feel like this full moon in Scorpio, that the energy of that tower is almost like dragging out, dragging away those old world energies that have been wanting to hold on for dear life, and will continue to drag them off, especially through the full moon in Capricorn, like I mentioned. Those energies, entities, contracts, beings that don't want to let you live your sovereign truth without somehow trying to play and lord over you and be God over you, a lot of the time behind the scenes, or manipulating energetically or emotionally, spiritually, mentally, however. So, yes. Lilith is still moving through Scorpio. I'm loving this because Lilith in Scorpio, she ain't taking no shit. She's just like, it's time for you to get your stuff back. Everything that you were harvested for, it's time for you to get it back. Lilith is like, Lilith in Scorpio, like even as we move out of this Taurus season and away from this full moon in Scorpio, Lilith is gunning hard in that scorpionic energy, helping us to be born again in our power, but also to get back everything that was stolen that caused us to descend to begin with. So that's what I have for you. I hope that this report was helpful and insightful. I hope that it confirmed what it was you're feeling, and I hope that it helps you, most importantly, to be more rooted and grounded in yourself and in your truth. I do have a few more 90-minute reduced price soul recovery sessions. I'll put the information for that in the description box below. For those of you who are interested in my decrees, I have a lot more. I've just been writing decrees in the lead up to this full moon in Scorpio. So I'll put the information for those also. My decrees are free or by donation. So I'll put the information for that in the description box below. And I didn't mention it in the reading, but I should have, maybe because I've talked about it so much on Solara.xyz and on my on Solara Speaks. But when you're dealing with Taurus energy, it's time to use your voice. It's time to speak. So doing work that declares your truth, when your truth is challenged, using your voice to put the records aright, is very powerful through this window, through Taurus season. And it's even magnified through the full moon energies. So decree work is really, really potent through this energy window. So I will always say, my decrees, you can use them as they are, but better still, learn how to create and craft your own. And you can use mine as a template, or to give you more information about cosmological law. You can use them in that way also. But using your own words to as an expression of your authority and what it is that you're going to accept as part of your story, and how you're going to reject other people's spells and words and things they're trying to enforce upon you, right? So use your voice to declare and to decree and to seal. Okay, so I'll see you guys again for the new moon in Gemini at the end of the month. I wish you the best. Until next time, be well.